a lot of what I think the Bills are going to do is actually, somewhat impacted by the way that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have been talking about TJ Yeldon. I personally think that there is some fire to that smoke, where a lot of people are talking about it as being total just smoke and coach speak or GM speak. So I don't know if you want to transition here, Matt, but that's what I'll say about the draft piece, at least.
Yeah. So I think that to give a little bit of background here on what actually Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have been saying is, it's a few things with TJ Yeldon. He accepted a role he probably signed up for when he came in. He probably came in with, a competing room with a chance to be the secondary back behind probably what most people thought was LaShawn McCoy when he signed before the draft. And he was coming off a year in 2018 when he went for 900 all-purpose yards with 5 touchdowns. And, you take a look at those 150 touches and you subtract Frank Gore's workload last year and add that in, what could this offense have looked like last year? And I think one of the things with Yeldon for me is a lot of people say, well, he's not like what they want in their offense in that secondary role because they had Frank Gore, that downhill presence. Well, maybe they learned something last year that's not the way to go. Like, I think you can have 3 dynamic running backs as a la a San Francisco 49ers with Tevin Coleman, Raheem Mostert, even Matt Breida. Yeah, 3 guys that are like dynamic with the ball that could do multiple things. When Frank Gore came into the game, you even watched it in the Houston game, everything came screeching to a halt. And I think that with TJ, at the very least, you get a guy that's not going to blow you away in between the tackles. But I think that Devin Singletary blew me away in between the tackles last year. So I'm ready to have TJ Yeldon play that traditional third down role, if that's your best option. And I'm not saying that they won't have a better option, but as it stands right now, I don't think you have to go after a Carlos Hyde or a Lamar Miller. I think TJ Yeldon is fine in that role, unless you're going to maybe kick the tires on a Devonta Freeman if that value, becomes so good you want to take a chance on that because of, he had some really high-end production at his peak. But again, injury problems for at least 2 of those 3 names. So there's a lot of options that you can go, and I don't think you'd be going wrong with TJ Yeldon.
I am very okay with TJ Yeldon having a bigger role than I think most other people are. And the reason I'm okay with it is because would it be great to have a higher dynamic running back that we can really be confident is a higher dynamic running back than TJ Yeldon? Yes, that would be fine. I would very much like that. But if we don't, the Bills, the league in general is able to get decent production out of guys who have less cachet than TJ Yeldon, and he doesn't have a whole lot. So, with that being the case, I just don't, if we have the opportunity to get a high-end guy at 54, that would be fine. That would be great. If we do not, I really am not that worried about it because I do think that TJ Yeldon, he had some ball security issues last season. And, we have a joke running amongst, Bruce and I and Joe Marino that he's tackleable because of how upright that he runs. Mm-hmm. That was a word that was used to describe him by Joe Marino's brother. And we kind of think that was funny. So we keep saying that. But I just don't, I'm just not that worried about TJ Yeldon. And I think that, when Beane talks about, I remember scouting him when he came out, and he's referencing that, Beane has a reputation for being relatively candid. I mean, you guys talk to him more than Bruce and I do, or we've never talked to him, right? So you and Ryan can talk about whether or not you think that's an accurate description of Beane. I just don't, when he mentions I remember thinking highly of this guy years ago, and I still do. And then we brought him in last year, and I still thought highly of him then. I'm not convinced that the Bills are as worried about that position as a lot of people like us are.
No, I think that's a fair point. And Matt's actually mentioned a few times that they were going to go with Frank Gore last year. They respected Gore. They love Gore's game. Yeldon really didn't have a chance to get that running back 2 job. Obviously, Gore's, he's out the window now. He's still hoping to play somewhere in 2020, but I don't see it being in Buffalo, obviously. So now the door is open for Yeldon. And, you never know what's going to happen in the draft in terms of where a prospect falls, and a team, the Bills then might have no choice but to add a running back or add some competition into the room. But Yeldon definitely has a much bigger and better opportunity in 2020 to make a week-by-week production, or to make a contribution on a weekly basis than he did last season.
I know there's something cooking underneath that mask. Let it out. Let it out, Bruce.
I am not a TJ Yeldon guy. I do think that TJ Yeldon was so incredibly successful in Jacksonville that they felt the need to spend a top 10 pick on a running back so that they wouldn't have to give him the ball anymore.
But then they still gave him the ball, though.
They still gave him the ball because Leonard Fournette got banged up, and
right.
Doug Marrone likes his timeshares. So, TJ Yeldon, I think, is a replacement level running back. And I'm okay with that if your starter is Ezekiel Elliott and you're going to give him 350 touches. But if your starter is someone who is in an offense where philosophically Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are on the same page when it comes to dual running backs. You saw Carolina with Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams. They spent two first-round picks on running backs. One. And so they clearly believe in that second running back spot to such a significant degree that they're willing to invest massive resources in it. TJ Yeldon doesn't strike me as a massive resource. In fact, his 2-year contract kind of seems like a hedge to me against the possibility of not finding what you want.
I gotta stop reading the comment section.
I get the feeling I'm being laughed at, and I'm going to have to go back. Can I watch that?
Here's they basically accused you of Dutch ovening yourself in your mask. That's what they're accusing you of.
And if you see, if you're listening to this in podcast form, if you could see Bruce right now, maybe I'll share a little image in the notes if that's possible.
Yeah.
You'll understand why it's so funny.
Okay, so here's the other thing about the Bills in the running back position that makes me a little bit more okay with Yeldon. When we signed Chris Ivory, I thought we were going to get. I mean, I'm getting hyperbolic. I thought we were going to get 5 yards out of him for the year. I was not at all optimistic that Chris Ivory was going to do jack. Can I swear? I don't know. What are we doing here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jack shit. I didn't think we were going to get anything out of Chris Ivory. Okay. I also didn't think we were going to get anything meaningful on the field out of Frank Gore. Now, by the end of the season, we were having a hard time getting anything meaningful out of Frank Gore. But at the beginning of the season, we were getting more out of him than I could even daydream of.
He caught a couple passes too.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the season.
Yeah. I mean, in general, Frank Gore was productive to an extent that was way more than I expected. And I believe that I believe it's totally possible for TJ Yeldon to be more satisfactory than a lot of us are talking about. Now, again, if there's an opportunity to clearly upgrade over him at 54, I am on board, but I'm not worried or anxious that TJ Yeldon is a significant liability for us in the offense. If we were to walk in with, those two guys and then, 5th round or 6th round pick or street free agent guy and Tywan Jones, I'm not worried about it. That's me. But I just think that I've already been proven wrong twice. And I'm not going to continue to say that these guys that the Bills believe are going to be productive at running back 2 are not going to be productive anymore.
Let me just quickly chime in, Nick, and say that, you were expecting Chris Ivory to only have about 5 yards rushing. That still would have been 8 yards more than Reggie Bush had with the Bills a few years back. We ended with -3. So
different regime. And if somebody wants to spike the ball on me right now, Ryan, Mike Tolbert is the point that you should be making.
Yeah.
Very good. No, it's a good, lively conversation. I think that, I think there's some people in Bills Mafia, some fans that really, really, really want one of these guys, because I think if you look at the top 3 backs that are, and I tried to share this out last week, just to kind of put it in perspective about what like some of the top analysts think of this top end of this running back class, those top 3 guys are in the top 40, or really top 4. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is ranked in the top 40 in most big boards. And so we're talking about, potentially 2 or 3 of them being available sometime early in the second round. That's insane value that without a first round pick, it would almost feel like a first round pick. So I get why some Bills fans are like, hell yeah, I'm sold. Go out there and get a tag team partner for Devin Singletary. But I've seen a lot of comments about Edwards-Helaire. I think he would mimic a lot of the things that Devin Singletary already does. And if that makes sense, if that's going to work in this offense, I'm not Brian Dable, I'm not Sean McDermott. Do what you're going to do. But I think that you can kind of build around Devin Singletary a little bit differently and a little bit more economical, if you will, than going out and spending that kind of asset on a guy that is still at the end of the day going to get less carries than Devin Singletary. So I think that's where I struggle with the running back at 54, is that no matter how good it could be, the top guy, it could be Swift, and he'd be day 1 starter for a lot of guys. Here, he's going to be 2 on the depth chart.
I don't know if I agree with you on that. I don't know. Bruce, do you think that Swift would come in as RB2 if he was here?
I think any of the top 3 would walk in the door as RB1. I think, and this is coming from like Devin Singletary, but when you have Devin Singletary will always be limited by the fact that he can't break the big one. He doesn't have the wheels for the long ball, and that's okay. You don't need that to be a starting running back in the NFL. You need vision and you need contact balance. And you combine that with his lateral agility. Devin Singletary is a starting running back in this league. He absolutely is. Unless you have a dynamic RB1. And I think that's what Swift and Taylor and Dobbins are. They have the ability to be, especially someone like Dobbins, who can get you the correct decision to get you to 4 yards. And that's great. But he's also got the wheels to be able to take that 4 yards and take it 40. And so I like Devin Singletary. I was fine with him. He was a top 5 running back for me last year. I was fine with taking him when we did last year, assuming we got rid of LaShawn McCoy. Let me make sure I clarify that. But we did get rid of LaShawn McCoy, and I think Devin Singletary had a great first year. But these are dynamic players. The reason we're even having this discussion is because there's a possibility of a player that really shouldn't be there from a talent standpoint.
Right.
Being
right.
54. That's how good they are. There's a chance we have all these discussions about it, and none of them are there.
Parrino, you say that you say that Singletary is RB1 no matter what, and you just get that sense because of how much they love him.
I think that combined with the whole mantra in the building, like you come in here and you earn everything. So if you can go out there and get one of the top backs, but Devin Singletary earned that job last year. I mean, 5.1 yards per carry for the season, but the usage rate and the production, the way that he he embodies their process, their culture. Like, I think that, there's and I think it's a little bit mixed though, because I think Brandon Beane did send a little mixed messages. I think it was last week on the call with, I don't know what he said, but I think he's like, we're happy with Devin.
Right,
running. Go ahead.
Right now.
Our back for now.
Right. So to me, I guess that could kind of throw you off a little bit, but I think they like what he brings from a consistency standpoint. And I think they like that he's got a little bit of Frank Gore in him at running back 1. And whether you like that or you don't like that, or you think that a higher end guy could come in here and be that running back 1, I think they will defer to that. And I think the evidence is how they stuck with Frank Gore, even as he struggled down the stretch with an option like TJ Yeldon available. So I don't know. I could see both ways. And if somebody did come in here, yeah, sure, that would make sense. If they were that much better and they earned the job and they had more high end playmaking ability. But I think that they do believe in Singletary to be RB1.
I think it's going to be hard for another guy, a rookie especially, to come in and earn the job with a limited offseason, which it looks like by all extents and purposes, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a fair point.